that it'll be with.
And then click that, make it over.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, you
Okay,
could.
you can. Okay.
You can. I just have
Okay.
to remote.
We'll get started in just a minute. Welcome, everyone.
Oh, gentle heart, oh simple soul, you have come so far on your own. Do not turn back, do not lose hope. Who can say how far is left to go? And all the nights you've walked alone, you followed lights to guide you home. Well, should the dawn refuse to rise, should the darkness close on all sides, well, may you find your heart next to mine, for we found hope in a hopeless time.
That's very nice. Welcome, good morning, everyone here, all the folks who've joined us here in person, and anyone on Zoom, newcomers, guests, and members. Today is Sunday, April 16th. Our theme for April is grief. And today we have a video sermon, Grief and Love by Amy McClendon. And let's read our fourth principle together. We affirm and promote a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Our opening words, Mary, would you like to read? Oh, I could step away. Would you prefer here?
You don't get over it by Jeanette. You'll get over it. It's the cliches that cause the trouble. To lose someone you love is to alter your life forever. You don't get over it because it is the person you love. Pain stops. There are you people, but the gap never closes. This whole thing is the shape of you, and no one else can fit.
Powerful words.
Yes.
Now I will light the chalice, symbol of our faith. After I light it, we'll go ahead and read it together. As we kindle this flame, we honor and remember those who have passed into the mystery. Their brightness lives on in our vision. Their courage lives on in our commitments. And their love continues to bless the world through us. And now it is time for our joys and concerns. If anyone would like to share a joy or concern, please raise your hand and come up. I see Phyllis has already raised her hand. She's coming up.
Well, Phoenix isn't feeling well.
Oh,
Fighting allergies for 2 weeks. For him.
anyone else here? Yes, Linda, please come up.
Is that
I'm also joyous because for this past week since last Friday, we got this my family visiting. And they just all been to be careful. I'll do that for you. And I didn't cook any meals or fix food, do anything that they know, and they just like. I'm not used to that. And they didn't watch we didn't watch the news, and I hardly didn't know what was going on Saturday. It just keeps happening. The shootings, the riots, the discrimination, everything just keeps happening. That maybe I was fortunate. People who are concerned about that. And I loved it. They loved me back because it was taking care of me. So
That's great. Would you like to light a candle? Would you like me to do that for you?
yes, we
I'll light the candle. Anyone else here? Yes. Please come up.
Well, I have a concern that, small personal concern that became a joy. The lightning storm before last knocked out the power supply on my dishwasher.
No.
But I was able to get a very nice repair person in, a very nice repairman. And he did fix it and it is working again. So that's
All
a
right.
small person. I can recommend a appliance service outfit. If anybody needs one.
That's all.
Yeah.
To know.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to share a joy. Just I was in Chicago last week. So we just had a great time. I was telling some of you earlier, it was just a great trip. Everything went well, went smoothly. And we had a great time. So good to be together. Anyone else here? Mary, will you
Well,
get up?
I was gonna like when Linda addressed the concern about the shootings. What can we do, right, to everybody we know, even if we don't think they're gonna care, perhaps if they get enough letters out of state people. And all others, yeah, we need to do something about gun control. And might be a good thing not to watch the news sometimes. In fact, Dr. Andrew Wild says to do a 3-day fast every week from the news, not to be mired in all the sadness. Find lovely things to do, but don't give up the news off. So, but anyway, that was.
Anyone on Zoom?
Yes. You can raise your hand on Zoom or to speak up. To share with us. Who's with us on Zoom? Marina. Just Jackie's not here? I'd like to share something. I had the opportunity to help my wife's cousin yesterday. Her daughter had, I think, 3 cats, and they had scratched up the frames for the doors. Something my cat does that too. And so it was obvious that damage had been done, and it was stained wood. So I found a matching stain to cover the damaged area. You can't really tell now. And there was, it's a trailer, so they have a paneling that's kind of a cream colored, but it's spackled. It's really a pattern like a wallpaper, but very small. So it looks like one solid color. And I was able to match that at Home Depot, and it came out. There was a big spot that paper had been torn off by a cat, I guess. And it covered it very well. So they were very happy about that. Just one less thing for them to worry about. So I was glad I could help with that. That's my joy. But I was also sad because I was experiencing grief from just thinking about the loss and how they had to deal with it. And my wife's cousin's husband is not well. So he's kind of struggling with this. So that's my concern. So we can recover from this grief.
I put a piece of driftwood in my house. But there are those scratching posts.
I have one too, but my cat still goes.
Oh.
I noticed. It's not, I guess it's not hard enough. He really wants it sharp. Yeah.
If no one else wants to come up and share, I will go ahead and light a candle for all the joys and concerns that do remain unspoken. Now let's read together. For the joys shared, we join in the celebration. For the sorrows and concerns spoken here, may you feel our sympathy and compassion. For all that remains unspoken, both joy and sorrow, may the joy of our beauty offer you of kindness and hope. Song.
All right. This is a cappella. It can be done with percussion instruments, but I think we're just going to try it a cappella today. And so your part is the chorus. Love is the water that wears down the rock. I'll say the other verses. So the chorus is in bold. All right. So I'm going to go through the chorus and then we'll say each line at a time, and then I'll start with the first verse. Love is the water that wears down the rock. Love is the water that wears down the rock. Love is the power that won't be stopped. Love is the water that wears down the rock. Got it?
I think so.
You want to go through line by line? Okay.
We're good.
You say your heart's been turned to stone. You say you want to be left alone. You say love only made you weep and moan. Let me tell you something that you know in your bones. Love is the water that wears down the rock. Love is the water that wears down the rock. Love is the power that won't be stopped. Love is the water that wears down the rock. You say your soul's like a dry river bed. Stop waiting for the water long ago, you said. Better pray all night for the rain instead. Love comes like a tidal wave over your head. Love is the water that wears down the rock. Love is the water that wears down the rock. Love is the power that won't be stopped. Love is the water that wears down the rock. You say waiting for love takes too long, dulls the sharp mind and weakens the strong. You may be right, but you may be wrong, 'cause love can make a mountain come tumbling down. Love is the water that wears down the rock. Love is the water that wears down the rock. Love is the power that won't be stopped. Love is the water that wears down the rock. The river washes over every woman and man. Feet in the gravel and mud in your hands. Nothing can stand against love's command. Every boulder turns into a grain of sand. Love is the water that wears down the rock. Love is the water that wears down the rock. Love is the power that won't be stopped. Love is the water that wears down the rock. Love is the water that wears down the rock. Love is the water that wears down the rock. Love is the power that won't be stopped. Love is the water that wears down the rock. Very nice.
First of all,
Good one.
I requested that this be delivered after 12.
Oh.
Just deliver it now, and look at the condition it's in.
Oh,
It was also
no.
bad. Virginia Mary Gant's birthday, that I call it, today's Scott's birthday.
Oh. Cupcakes for everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, double cupcakes. I would like to light a candle for Scott. Can I do that?
Oh.
Yes. For all that he does for us.
Yes. And yourself and Chris.
Thank you. Oh, that's right, our birthday.
Yeah.
We're birthday twins. Very nice.
Yeah.
And we're all the
Thank
same
God.
age.
That's a good idea.
It makes my job so much easier when they help me on Monday night.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
It's our job.
it's our job. They do it well.
That's what's.
You say your heart.
Well, I did that for people online.
Oh, right, I'm caught.
Chris?
I'm caught. She's helping. Oh, thank you.
You see, that's
Oh,
why
I see it. Oh, I'm
that's
sorry.
why I hate these chairs.
I have to mark out. It
Yeah.
hasn't, it caught me.
This was cracked.
It is cracked.
Yeah, she was cracked.
Okay,
Thank you. Allowing for the process of grief. Grief by Reverend Alice King. Grief has been called a symptom of real love, a side effect. There is no way not to experience grief if we are alive. Our hearts know that to love is to risk grieving. Our hearts also know that loving is worth living.
Thank you, Chris.
You say your
Yeah, now we have a responsive reading. This is, I guess in our, that grade hymnal, this is number 470, affirmation by Reverend Leonard Mason. I will read the first line, and then if you all read the bold, the R for response. We affirm the unfailing renewal of life.
Rising from the earth and reaching for the sun, all living creatures shall fulfill themselves.
We affirm the steady growth of human companionship.
Rising from ancient cradles and reaching for the stars, people the world over shall seek the ways of understanding.
We affirm a continuing hope.
Without every tragedy, the spirits of individuals shall rise to build a better world.
Another song is let.
Yeah, this will be one of our candidates for our closing song in the future. If we like it, we'll use it, and we'll try different ones. Yeah.
Yes. Each Sunday, we'll be playing songs that are candidates for a while until we decide on one. You can keep suggesting.
I thought maybe he'll never.
We're so democratic. Just keep going.
Yeah. with her as our mother. We are family. Let us walk with each other. Perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my solemn vow. To take each moment and live each moment to serve humanity. Let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me. So we would do that a cappella, I assume, for the closing. We don't need instruments once we learn the melody. It sounds like most of you already know it.
Yeah.
That was it.
Very
That's a
nice.
point in its favor.
Yeah.
And very nice adaptation. Thank you, Scott. Mary, will you please?
Wow. Quiet time. Being here now, letting go of all else. Relax, take in deep breaths, and with each exhalation, relax somewhat. Take a couple big deep breaths. Feel your belly. Feel it even in your back. Exhale. Relax. And then just continue with regular breaths. Thoughts come, let them go. Go back to focusing on the breath.
She'll start coming back. Thank you, Bruce.
Now we have our video sermon. This is from Amy McClendon. This is a Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Phoenix. And it's Grief and Love.
There is no way to go through this life without loss. But man, has that loss felt accelerated over the last 2.5 years. Some of these losses we can easily name: the loss of a loved one to COVID or other causes, for example, the losses Bill shared that he experienced in his life. And there are many other losses we've grieved and are still grieving that may feel harder to put our thumbs on, or less conventional, and therefore may be harder to acknowledge in our lives and in the lives of others. We've lost time with our loved ones, and we grieve the time we won't get back. I have this vibrant, incredible goddaughter who was born in July of 2020, and I will never have the chance to hold her as a baby. We've lost milestones, and we've mourned the way we plan to celebrate that birthday, graduation, anniversary, wedding, birth, prom, new home, retirement, holiday, all of the things. We've lost jobs, and with them, perhaps our sense of purpose or a key aspect of our identity. We lost a sense of security, predictability, control. Maybe that was all an illusion to begin with, but we grieved it nonetheless. Beyond the losses that feel very specific to the pandemic times, the world kept on spinning, and we experienced the inevitable losses that come with living life. Friends, family members, and community members have passed away. We've struggled through health diagnoses and endured treatment. We've ended relationships. Friendships have faded or changed. In addition to that visceral experience of losing a person in the present moment, we've grieved the loss of the future we imagined with them. We've grieved the relationships we wish we could have with people who are still here with us, but with whom we know that having that connection would prevent us from living our healthiest, truest, safest selves. The grief we've experienced in our individual lives has all occurred against the backdrop of multi-layered collective grief. We grieve for a world filled with racism, hatred, violence, transphobia, and so much more. None of this is new, but many of us have grappled with it and our own role in it in new ways over the last few years. We grieve for our planet as we continue to learn more and more about the devastating and irreversible changes our species has set into motion. And we are now actively grieving the loss of bodily autonomy for people who can become pregnant, with the recognition that Black and brown folks have long and repeatedly been denied their rights to make decisions about their bodies. I read somewhere that there's a German word for this, Weltschmerz, roughly translated to world pain. the grief that we feel at the state of the world, and our wish that things were different. At a time when we needed one another's support, we were isolated, and our capacity for community care felt diminished as everyone's individual emotional resources were depleted by managing their own day-to-day experiences and losses. It is a lot to hold, and I don't think any of us are giving ourselves credit for all that we've held and all that we continue to hold. So I'll just invite everybody to take a deep breath. I just named a lot. We're holding that all in this space, so just So before I get further in, I want to share a few disclaimers. While I felt called to share about this topic, I also feel grossly inadequate. I even said to Reverend Christine, "Who am I to talk about grief? I haven't experienced the loss of a child, a parent, a spouse." She simply replied, "Who are you not to?" I think that's part of our problem. All of our grief matters. Our grief over our capital L losses and our lowercase l losses. They aren't the same, and I can't pretend to know what it feels like to carry the experiences that each of you carries. But ignoring or downplaying my own grief doesn't make yours any less painful. Second disclaimer, I am not here to offer a solution or put a silver lining spin on this. Much as I've wished as I've navigated my own losses, there is no checklist, there's no right way of doing this. I'm not a professional grief counselor. I am here as a human, humaning with all of you, getting it wrong, trying again, and giving myself these reminders as much as anyone else. In March 2020, that very first month when all of our lives shifted so dramatically, an article from the Harvard Business Review went viral. It was called, "That Discomfort You're Feeling is Grief." At the time, I forwarded it to several family members and friends, as it really helped me to have the language to describe what I was experiencing. The author interviews David Kessler, a grief expert, who shares, quote, "There is something powerful about naming these pandemic experiences as grief. When you name it, you feel it, and it moves through you. Emotions need motion. I feel sad. Let me go feel sad for 5 minutes," end quote. One thing that's helped me in naming and feeling my grief is to recognize what it symbolizes for me. About 6 months into the pandemic, I had a significant loss in my life when my former partner and I ended our relationship. Sometime shortly after that, I read a quote from psychologist Susan David, "Grief is love looking for a home." It was the first time I made that connection between grief and love, and it struck me like a lightning bolt. Of course, these two are so deeply connected. Grief advocate Marissa Renee Lee put it even more simply in the title of her recent book, "Grief is Love." Grief is love. Being able to name what I was experiencing as grief and remind myself that the depth of my grief reflected the depth of my love didn't make my experience any easier, but it did give me some further language to describe what I was feeling and why. As someone who has always prided myself on being a good student, it's been hard for me to accept that there's no way to do grief, quote unquote, right. I wanted my therapist to give me a 5-step plan. I expected to feel incrementally better over time and always on a positive trajectory. Most of all, I wanted to fit grief into my schedule in a way that I could keep everything else moving, wrestle with it, and then emerge on the other side, tell myself that I would feel better in X number of months. Spoiler alert, grief doesn't work like that. I love this quote from author Elizabeth Gilbert that's so fitting with our theme. She says, "Grief does not obey your plans or your wishes. Grief will do whatever it wants to you, whenever it wants to. In that regard, grief has a lot in common with love, end quote. We can't control love, and we certainly can't control our grief. Now, here's where some of you might be thinking, wait, there is a roadmap to grief. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of grief. You might have heard of them: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. It turns out there are a few important caveats to keep in mind when you're thinking about these stages and how they might map onto your experience. First, they are not meant to be linear. You don't move cleanly from one stage to the next and then reach that ultimate state of healing. They come in all different orders, and it's incredibly common to cycle in and out of them, sometimes in the span of a few minutes. Second, and I didn't learn this until recently, these stages were initially identified for the person who was dying, not their loved ones left behind. Someone who knows they're nearing the end of their life might move through these 5 different stages, but not necessarily their loved ones who are mourning them after their death. I personally still find them to be useful, but it's one of those reminders to take what's useful to you and leave the rest. As for the timeline, it turns out that grief is for a lifetime. Thankfully, however, this doesn't mean that we'll be in our deepest sadness or our ragiest anger forever. What it does mean is that we will more acutely feel the both and of life. We can be deep in our grief and still capable of experiencing pure joy. We can be many years out from our loss and feel it anew and differently, especially in those joyful moments we desperately want to share with someone we're missing. Grief and love and grief and joy are so interconnected. So this is not the point where I talk about the silver lining of these impossibly challenging circumstances we've all been navigating. It is, however, when I remind us that we hold incredible capacity, more than we realize, to grow around these experiences of loss while still being forever changed by them. This is one of the images of grief that we'll share here in a moment that I found most helpful, and I offer it today in case it resonates with anyone else. So you might be able to read that. It says, people tend to believe that grief shrinks over time, but what really happens is that we grow around our grief. There are a few things I find particularly helpful about this. First, if your grief doesn't feel like it's getting smaller over time, that's okay, and dare I say normal. It's not about getting over the loss, but making space for it. Second, what changes is our capacity to carry that grief and to integrate it into our lives. We expand and grow around it, and as we do, we might feel ourselves carrying that loss a little differently. Like the lobster in our Together Time story, we will cycle through periods of intense discomfort, a sign that we're growing. We will hunker down to protect our tender selves while our new shells are forming, and we will reemerge in our new shapes. It's not a one and done. We will do this repeatedly over the course of our lives as we navigate many seasons of change and loss. And what do we do with our Weltschmerz, our grief over the state of the world? I'm reminded of the quote in our beloved minister's email signature from Dr. Cornel West. Never forget that justice is what love looks like in public. The grief we're feeling is a sign of our deep love for each other, for our communities, for our planet, and for ourselves. The grief and love both compel us to act, to live our love out loud. The grief is telling us to do something, and we can honor by listening and turning it into action, and caring for ourselves in a way that sustains us through this hard and necessary work. Which brings me to my final reflection on grief this morning. We heal in and through our relationships with ourselves and with each other. As I grieved the loss of my relationship while simultaneously grieving all that the pandemic seemed to have stripped from me, I leaned into my community, both here at UUCP and amongst family and close friends. It's hard for me to ask for support, and also very hard for many folks to know how to show up for someone who's experienced a loss. But I truly believe it is the love that was poured into me from so many different places that helped to sustain me through this time. The unexpected care package that showed up several months after my loss, my best friend who listened to me verbally process my experience on constant repeat, my sister who still asks me how I'm doing and recognizes that this grief will always be a part of me. Just like there's no right way to grieve, there is no right way to show up for a loved one who's going through a difficult time. Sometimes we get so uncomfortable around other people's discomfort that we don't do anything at all. We have to accept that we won't do it perfectly and still find ways to show up that are authentic to us and to our relationship with the person who's grieving. So where does that leave us if I'm not going to offer the magic formula for healing? We name it. We acknowledge grief in ourselves and in others. We honor the love that is inextricably tied to the grief. Grief would not exist without that love. And we choose love again and again and again. We give ourselves and each other grace and compassion, especially ourselves. We abandon the expectation that we will come out on the other side. There is no other side. We're in it now. Our capacity to carry our grief will grow and change, but all that we've experienced remains a part of us forever. In fact, we may even find that it becomes part of our superpower, a well of empathy we can draw on as we work to support those around us, and a source of strength as we work to build a more just world. We lean on each other and take turns and share of ourselves when we're able to. We recognize when we have the capacity to give, and we accept the support when we need it. We hold on to the words from our meditation prayer today and marvel at how our hearts can keep on beating despite all we've experienced. And we know that the only cure for love is more of it. May it be so.
Powerful words.
From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and in this we live.
We'll extinguish the chalice, and then we will read together. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Chris, will you read our announcements?
Well, Earth Day's next Saturday,
And we're thinking about what we can do. I don't know, we have to do something that's necessarily, truly organized, but if we want to go do something, I think we said there's something at Marcus Park and what else, other place, Mary, was it that we're doing something?
Something, boot, clean the boot or.
Oh, okay, some kind of I'll look that up. Okay. They have decided that we're gonna be eating at Grayson's Boiling Point Seafood and Vietnamese Cuisine Restaurant on Touche Road at Johnson Street, past McDonald's, going towards Maurice.
It's on the right side of the road.
It's on the right side. You
After
pass
the-
Sonic and you make a sharp right between two car dealerships.
But it is on Johnson or?
It is off Johnston on Tuchet Road, just off Johnston.
It's
to the
visible,
right.
it's
Do you
visible
see it?
from Johnson.
It's not easily, it is visible, but not easily visible. So look for that sharp right to
With the
Judd
sun.
Road. And it's after you pass the Sonic.
That works.
Any other announcements?
So, today was Grief is Love Looking for Its Home. That was a great, video sermon. The young lady should think about becoming a UU, reverend. I mean, that was just great the way she wrote it. It's 22nd birthday, investing in our plans. So, on the 23rd, we will celebrate birthday here, and we'll have a potluck, and I think Linda had suggested Mexican. So we have different things that Scott maybe could send out an email and seeing if y'all change your minds and everybody can bring something. I'm thinking about bringing ground turkey and Mexican corn, which is corn, which is boiled, and then you put cheese on it. So it's kind of a meal in itself. And then it's Festival International on the 26th or 30th. And Mary had suggested let's lunch at the festival. That's a great
We
idea.
did that one year.
Yeah.
I got a hula hoop
I
on it.
remember that.
Hula hoop.
I
Oh,
want to see Mary hula hoop.
yes.
Mhm.
I got a hula hoop, I can bring it.
Okay.
She's
And of
pretty
course,
good at
our
it, too.
theme is, our April theme is Grief. So next thing
It's
is
love the boot.
love the boot.
Love,
Okay.
okay, I think,
It's keep Louisiana beautiful.
last year, my son was here and we felt that Longfellow Park, they did their cleanup and we got the shirts.
Yeah, so to register as a
We
group.
may be able to,
Just the
yes, and wear our Unitarian shirts, that would be really nice. If we
And
went
is
as
that
a
in
group.
St. Martinsville? Is that?
Well, it doesn't have to be in St.
Oh,
Martin, I'm
okay.
sure they're doing it. I'm sure other groups are doing it.
Gotcha.
So at lunch, let's Google that
Mhm.
and see what's available. And maybe make a
Because we
decision.
can register as a group and then I
Yes,
guess we can say where we're
Let
gonna
them know, I think we need to have a presence.
Do we know who's going to lunch today?
go. Okay. No.
6, 7?
And I asked the hostess there, and if we call, we can reserve a table. 6 is the number
No, 7.
7.
That's what I got.
Okay.
So we should do that. See
Yes.
what's done. So,
Okay, and now we will gather in a circle.
Move our chairs a little bit.
we don't have that many. We
No,
have-
just
we
the
don't
ones
have
that are
it.
here.
We can just go around the chair.
You want to put it right here? Those chairs are already, wait,
Fishing.
Comedy shop.
that's the bad one.
Yeah, that's the back.
That's the bad one that pinched my sweater.
Oh, dear.
We need to create a way.
Yeah, or get a cover for it instead of.
This is my song, O people of all nations. a song of peace for lands out far. This is my home, the country where my heart is. Here are my hopes, my dreams, my holy shrine. But other hearts in other lands are beating with hopes and dreams as true and high as mine.
And
You want me to do it?
words, I'll do it.
You'll do it.
Yeah. If here you have found freedom by Laura Lynn Bellamy. If here you have found freedom, take it with you into the world. If you have found comfort, go and share it with others. If you have dreamed dreams, help one another, they may come true. If you have known love, give some back to a bruised and hurting world. Go in peace.
It pinched me. It's broken. But we can kind of push way down, trying to way up on my glasses.
You sure